3 Maccabees, chapters 1 and 2. Now Philopater, on learning from those who came back that Antiochus had made himself master of the places which belonged to himself, sent orders to all his footmen and horsemen, took him with his sister Arsinoe, and marched out as far as the parts of Raphia, where Antiochus and his forces encamped. And one Theodotus, intending to carry out his design, took with him the bravest of the armed men who had been before committed to his trust by Ptolemy, and got through at night to the tent of Ptolemy, to kill him on his own responsibility, and so to end the war. But Dositheus, called the son of Dremulus, by birth a Jew, afterward a renegade from the laws and observances of his country, conveyed Ptolemy away, and made an obscure person lie down in his stead in the tent. It befell this man to receive the fate which was meant for the other. A fierce battle then took place, and the men of Antiochus prevailing. Arsinoe continually went up and down the ranks, and with disheveled hair, with tears and entreaties, begged the soldiers to fight manfully for themselves, their children, and their wives, and promised that if they proved conquerors, she would give them 2 minae of gold apiece. It thus fell out that their enemies were defeated in hand-to-hand encounter, and that many of them were taken prisoners. Having vanquished this attempt, the king then decided to proceed to the neighboring cities and encourage them. By doing this, and by making donations to their temples, he inspired his subjects with confidence. The Jews also sent some of their council and of their elders to him. The greetings, guest gifts, and congratulations on the past bestowed by them filled him with the greater eagerness to visit their city. Having arrived at Jerusalem, sacrificed and offered thank offerings to the greatest God, and done whatever else was suitable to the sanctity of the place, and entered into the inner court, he was so struck with the exact magnificence of the place, and so wondered at the orderly arrangements of the temple, that he conceived the purpose of entering the sanctuary itself. And when they told him that this was not permissible, none of the nation, no, nor even the priests in general, but only the supreme high priest of all, and he only once a year, being allowed to go in, he would by no means give way. Then they read the law to him, but he persisted in obtruding himself, exclaiming that he ought to be allowed, and saying, "Be it that they were deprived of this honor, I ought not to be." And he put the question, why, when he entered all temples, none of the priests who were present forbade him. He was thoughtlessly answered by someone that he did wrong to boast of this. "Well, since I have done this," said he, "be the cause what it may, shall I not enter with or without your consent?" And when the priests fell down in their sacred vestments, imploring the greatest God to come and help in time of need, and to avert the violence of the fierce aggressor, and when they filled the temple with lamentations and tears, then those who had been left behind in the city were scared, and rushed forth, uncertain of the event. Virgins, who had been shut up within their chambers, came out with their mothers, scattering dust and ashes on their heads, and filling the streets with outcries. Women, but recently separated off, left their bridal chambers, left the reserve that befitted them, and ran about the city in a disorderly manner. Newborn babes were deserted by the mothers or nurses who waited upon them, some here, some there, in houses or in fields. These now, with an ardor which could not be checked, swarmed into the Most High Temple. Various were the prayers offered up by those who assembled in this place, on account of the unholy attempt of the king. Along with these, there were some of the citizens who took courage and would not submit to his obstinacy, and his intention of carrying out his purpose. Calling out to arms and to die bravely in defense of the law of their fathers, they created a great uproar in the place, and were with difficulty brought back by the aged and the elders to the station of prayer which they had occupied before. During this time the multitude kept on praying. The elders who surrounded the king strove in many ways to divert his haughty mind from the design which he had formed. He, in his hardened mood, insensible to all persuasion, was going onwards with the view of carrying out this design. Yet even his own officers, when they saw this, joined the Jews in an appeal to him who has all power to aid in the present crisis, and not wink at such overweening lawlessness. Such was the frequency and vehemence of the cry of the assembled crowd, that an indescribable noise ensued. Not the men only, the very walls and floors seemed to sound forth, all things preferring dissolution rather than to see the place defiled. Now was it that the high priest Simon bowed his knees over against the holy place, and spread out his hands in reverent form, and uttered the following supplication. O Lord, Lord, King of the heavens, and ruler of the whole creation, holy among the holy, sole governor, almighty, Give ear to us who are oppressed by a wicked and profane one, who exalteth his confidence in strength. It is thou, the Creator of all, the Lord of the universe, who art a righteous governor, and judgest all who act with pride and insolence. It was thou who didst destroy the former workers of unrighteousness, among whom were the giants, who trusted in their strength and hardihood, by covering them with a measureless flood. It was thou who didst make the Sodomites, whose workers of exceeding iniquity, men notorious for their vices, an example to after generations, when thou didst consume them with fire and brimstone. Thou didst make known thy power when thou causedst bold Pharaoh, the enslaver of thy people, to pass through the ordeal of many and diverse afflictions, and thou rolledst the depths of the sea over him, when he made a pursuit with chariots, and with a multitude of followers, and gavest a safe passage to those who put their trust in thee, the Lord of the whole creation. These saw and felt the works of thine hands, and praised thee, the Almighty. Thou, O King, when thou createdst the illimitable and measureless earth, didst choose out this city. Thou didst make this place sacred to thy name, albeit thou needest nothing. Thou didst glorify it with thy illustrious presence, after constructing it to the glory of thy great and honorable name. And thou didst promise, out of love to the house of Israel, that should we fall away from thee, and become afflicted, and then come to this house and pray, thou wouldest hear our prayer. Verily, thou art faithful and true. And whereas thou didst often aid our fathers when hard pressed, and in low estate, and deliveredst them out of the great dangers, see now, Holy King, how through our many and great sins we are borne down, and made subject to our enemies, and are become weak and powerless. We being in this low condition, this bold and profane man seeks to dishonor this holy place. Consecrate out of the earth to the name of thy majesty. Thy dwelling place, the heaven of heavens, is indeed unapproachable to men. But since it seemed good to thee to exhibit thy glory among thy people Israel, thou didst sanctify this place. Punish us not by means of the uncleanness of their men, nor chastise us by means of their profanity, lest the lawless ones should boast in their rage, and exult in exuberant pride of speech, and say, We have trampled upon the holy house, as idolatrous houses are trampled upon. Blot out our iniquities, and do away with our errors, and show forth thy compassion in this hour. Let thy mercies quickly go before us. Grant us peace, that the cast down and broken-hearted may praise thee with their mouth. At that time, God, who seeth all things, who is beyond all holy among the holy, heard that prayer so suitable, and scourged the man greatly uplifted with scorn and insolence. Shaking him to and fro as a reed is shaken with the wind, he cast him upon the pavement, powerless with limbs and paralyzed, by a righteous judgment deprived of the faculty of speech. His friends and bodyguards, beholding the swift recompense which had suddenly overtaken him, struck with exceeding terror, and fearing that he would die, speedily removed him. When in course of time he had come to himself, this severe check caused no repentance within him, but he departed with bitter threatenings. He proceeded to Egypt, grew worse in wickedness through his aforementioned companions in wine, who were lost to all goodness. And not satisfied with countless acts of impiety, his audacity so increased that he raised evil reports there, and many of his friends, watching his purpose attentively, joined in furthering his will. His purpose was to inflict a public stigma upon our race. Wherefore, he erected a pillar at the tower porch, and caused the following inscription to be engraven upon it: that the entrance to their own temple was to be refused to all those who would not sacrifice, that all the Jews were to be registered among the common people, that those who resisted were to be forcibly seized and put to death, that those who were thus registered were to be marked on their persons by the ivy leaf symbol of Dionysus, and to be set apart with these limited rites. To do away with the appearance of hating them all, he had it written underneath, that if any of them should elect to enter the community of those initiated in the rites, these should have equal rights within the Alexandrians. Some of those who were over the city, therefore, abhorring any approach to the city of piety, unhesitatingly gave in to the king, and expected to derive some great honor from a future connection with him. A nobler spirit, however, prompted the majority to cling to their religious observances, and by paying money that they might live unmolested, these sought to escape registration. Cheerfully looking forward to future aid, they abhorred their own apostates, considering them to be national foes, and debarring them from the common usages of social intercourse. 2 Esdras, chapter 9. He answered me then, and said, Measure thou the time diligently in itself, and when thou seest part of the signs past, which I have told thee before, then shalt thou understand. that it is this very same time wherein the Highest will begin to visit the world which he made. Therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes and uproars of the people in the world, then shalt thou well understand that the Most High spake of those things from the days that were before thee, even from the beginning. For as like all that is made in the world hath a beginning and an end, and the end is manifest, even so the times of the Highest have plain beginnings and wonders, and powerful works, and endings and effects and signs. And every one that shall be saved, and shall be able to escape by his works, and by faith, whereby ye have believed, shall be preserved from the said perils, and shall see my salvation in my land, and within my borders, for I have sanctified them for me from the beginning. Then shall it be in pitiful case, which now have abused my ways, and they that have cast them away despitefully shall dwell in torments. For such as in their life have received benefits, and have not known me, and they that have loathed my law, while they had yet liberty, and, when as yet place of repentance was open unto them, understood not, but despised it, the same must know it after death by pain. And therefore be thou not curious how the ungodly shall be punished, and when, but inquire how the righteous shall be saved, whose world it is, and for whom the world is created. Then I answered and said, I have said before, and now do speak, and will speak it also hereafter, that there be many more of them which perish than of them which shall be saved. Like as a wave is greater than a drop. And he answered me, saying, Like as the field is, so is also the seed. As the flowers be, such are their colors also. Such as the workman is, such also is the work. And as the husbandman is himself, so is his husbandry also. For it was the time of the world. And now, when I prepared the world, which was not yet made, even for them to dwell and that now live, no man spake against me. For then everyone obeyed. But now the manners of them which are created in this world that is made are corrupted by a perpetual seed, and by a law which is unsearchable rid themselves. So I considered the world, and behold, there was peril because of the devices that were come into it. And I saw, and spared it greatly, and have kept me a grape of the cluster, and a plant of a great people. Let the multitude perish then, which was born in vain, and let my grape be kept, and my plant, for with great labor have I made it perfect. Nevertheless, if thou wilt cease yet 7 days more, but thou shalt not fast in them, but go into a field of flowers, where no house is builded, and eat only the flowers of the field, taste no flesh, drink no wine, but eat flowers only, and pray unto the Highest continually, then will I come and talk with thee. So I went my way into the field which is called Ardoth, like as he commanded me, and there I sat among the flowers, and did eat of the herbs of the field, and the meat of the same satisfied me. After 7 days I sat upon the grass, my heart was vexed within me, like as before. And I opened my mouth, and began to talk before the Most High, and said, O Lord, thou that showest thyself unto us, thou wast showed unto our fathers in the wilderness, in a place where no man treadeth, in a barren place, when they came out of Egypt. And thou spakest, saying, Hear me, O Israel, and mark my words, thou seed of Jacob. For behold, I sow my law in you, and it shall bring fruit in you, and ye shall be honored in it forever. But our fathers, which received the law, kept it not, and observed not thy ordinances. And though the fruit of thy law did not perish, neither could it, for it was thine. Yet they that received it perished, because they kept not the thing that was sown in them. And lo, it is a custom, when the ground hath received seed, or the sea a ship, or any vessel meat or drink, that, being perished wherein it was sown or cast into, that thing also which was sown, or cast therein, or received, doth perish, and remaineth not with us. But with us it hath not happened so. For we that have received the law perish by sin, and our heart also which received it. Notwithstanding the law perisheth not, but remaineth in his force. And when I spake these things in my heart, I looked back with mine eyes, and upon the right side I saw a woman, and behold, she mourned, and wept with a loud voice, and was much grieved in heart, and her clothes were rent, and she had ashes upon her head. Then let I my thoughts go that I was in, and turned me unto her, and said unto her, Wherefore weepest thou? Why art thou so grieved in thy mind? And she said unto me, Sir, let me alone, that I may bewail myself, and add unto my sorrow, for I am sore vexed in my mind, and brought very low. And I said unto her, What aileth thee? Tell me. She said unto me, I, thy servant, have been barren, and had no child, though I had a husband 30 years. In those 30 years I did nothing else day and night, and every hour, but make my prayer to the highest. After 30 years God heard me, thine handmaid, looked upon my misery, considered my trouble, and gave me a son. And I was very glad of him, so was my husband also, and all my neighbors. We gave great honor unto the Almighty. And I nourished him with great travail. So when he grew up, and came to the time that he should have a wife, I made a feast. The Acts of the Apostles, chapter 27, verses 21 through 44. But after long abstinence, Paul stood forth in the midst of them, and said, Sirs, ye should have hearkened unto me, and not have loosed from Crete, and to have gained this harm and loss. And now I exhort you to be of good cheer, for there shall be no loss of any man's life among you, but of the ship. For there stood by me this night the angel of God, whose I am, and whom I serve, saying, Fear not, Paul, thou must be brought before Caesar, and lo, God hath given thee all them that sail with thee. Wherefore, sirs, be of good cheer, for I believe God, that it shall be even as it was told me. Howbeit we must be cast upon a certain island. But when the 14th night was come, as we were driven up and down in Adria, about midnight the shipmen deemed that they drew near to some country, and sounded, and found it 20 fathoms, and when they had gone a little further, they sounded again, and found it 15 fathoms. Then fearing lest we should have fallen upon rocks, they cast 4 anchors out of the stern, and wished for the day. And as the shipmen were about to flee out of the ship, they that had let down the boat into the sea, under color, as though they would have cast anchors out of the foreship, Paul said to the centurion and to the soldiers, Except these abide in the ship, ye cannot be saved. Then the soldiers cut off the ropes of the boat, and let her fall off. And while the day was coming on, Paul besought them to take meat, saying, This day is the 14th day that ye have tarried and continued fasting, having taken nothing. Wherefore I pray you to take some meat, for this is for your health, for there shall not a hair fall from your head of any of you. And when he had spoken, he took bread, and gave thanks to God in presence of them all, and when he had broken it, he began to eat. Then were they all of good cheer, and they also took some meat. And we were in all the ship 260 souls. And when they had eaten enough, they lighted the ship, and cast out the wheat into the sea. And when it was day, they knew not the land, but they discovered a certain creek with a shore, into which they were minded, if it were possible, to thrust in the ship. And when they had taken up the anchors, they committed themselves unto the sea, and loosed the rudder bands, and hoisted up the mainsail to the wind, and made toward shore. And falling into a place where 2 seas meet, they ran the ship aground, and the forepart struck fast, and remained immovable, but the hinder part was broken with the violence of the waves. And the soldiers' counsel was to kill the prisoners, lest any of them should swim out and escape. But the centurion, willing to save Paul, kept them from their purpose, and commanded that they which could swim should cast themselves first into the sea, and get to land. And the rest, some on boards, and some on broken pieces of the ship, and so it came to pass that they escaped all safe to land.